And I should have everything in front of me like this. Call, please.
Mayor Williams, Dick Anderson,
Here.
Chester Norikis,
Here.
Wes Ryan,
Here.
Roger Sprague,
Here.
Susan Walke, here, and Kip Ward.
Here. Great. Will you please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Consent agenda. No agenda items. We have comments from citizens present on agenda, non-agenda items. This is an opportunity for members of the audience to bring to the council's attention any item not listed on the agenda for public hearing or public comment. Comments are limited to 5 minutes per citizen, and the city recorder will use the light system. Speakers may not yield their times to others, and as a general rule, this is not a time for exchange of questions. At the conclusion of this agenda item, a councilor may discuss or raise questions regarding an item presented by a citizen. The mayor has the authority to reduce the time allowed for comment in accordance with the number of persons present and signed up to speak. As you approach, please sit down and speak directly into the microphone. Just give us your name. You don't need to give us your address. So we're going to start with Paul Robertson. Sorry? Oh, okay. John, did you want to speak now? Okay.
Mayor, you should have two sign-up sheets. One is for public hearing, and the other one would be just for regular.
I
Okay.
just got this one. We'll work through it. Make sure you pull the microphone around there, John.
I'm John Forrest. I live at 1820 Northeast West Devils Lake, Lincoln City. I have founded, I'm sorry, I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but it just keeps going on. It doesn't get any better. So I have founded and run the Nell Scott Reef Big Wave Classic for 10 years. A special committee appointed by the BCB decided to steal my event and award it to the Big Wave World Tour, a California corporation that promised the moon to the city for the permit. Big Wave World Tour has a reputation for steamrolling local communities in their quest for total control of big wave surfing events. They have been denied by the Eddy, which is the most prestigious big wave event in Hawaii. Over the last 3 years, they have been denied entry to do their event in Australia and been repelled by the locals for their planned event in South Africa. They were kicked out of the Mavericks Big Wave event in Half Moon Bay, California last year. I split off, footnote, I split off from them 3 years ago because I saw the writing on the wall. They had an event at Punta de Lobos, Chile last spring, which they had guaranteed a webcast in order to gain rights to the event. The contest came and they did not do the promised webcast. A local Chilean webcast team set up their equipment to do a webcast and were told by the police to take down their equipment on order from the gringo lawyers of the Big Wave World Tour. Their attitude being, if we aren't webcasting, nobody is. As you might imagine, it didn't go over well with the Chilean surf community. So this is who our illustrious committee has given the rights to do an event in our town. I might add that our police chief, Keith Killian, was on this committee and obviously didn't bother to check the credentials of this outfit to check their reputation and record. Everything I have said is easy to check out on the internet and in the media. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Mr. Hoover.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, my name is Jim Hoover. I live at 3150 East Devils Lake Road. I'm a property owner in the City of Lincoln City and have a business in the City of Lincoln City also. For those who are taking time to watch this either on their computer or live this evening, we had a very significant event that happened this week that I'm imagining didn't have a chance to make it into the agenda since the agenda is published ahead of time. And that significant event that happened was that the Ethics Board over in the state of Oregon actually had a chance to review the ethics complaint that, as I understand it, had about 500 pages of included documentation. It was a 26-page long ethics complaint filed by the City Council minus the mayor, and Roger Sprague is the council president, and our city attorney. And I'm not sure I'm going to get the exact wording right, but I was glad to hear that the ethics board voted 5-0 to throw out the complaint and basically said there wasn't merit to it. And so while it didn't make it on the agenda tonight, I'm assuming that at some point some city councilor will make a motion that we publicly apologize to the mayor for the grief that he's been put through with this part of the process. And while you can't make right the time that it's taken or the energy it's taken or the emotion that's taken, I think it would be a stand-up thing to do to say we apologize for filing a complaint against one of the people on our city council, and we apologize for the actions of our attorney, who obviously was in error in his counsel to the city council in filing this ethics complaint as judged by the ethics division. Number 2, stuck way in the budget, supplemental budget, there's a request that I'll be speaking to the public hearing part, but just so I have enough time, I'll talk about it right now. There's an additional request of $30,000 requested by the attorney to fund outside legal fees or outside attorneys. And while I still haven't heard from the council or from anybody else how much we spent on this ethics complaint or on the second item that I believe is still running, which is the hiring of a private investigator to also see if they can somehow find something that our mayor has done wrong. When I first saw the $30,000 request for additional funding, the first thing that came to my mind, it was a lot like when I had young children and they broke their piggy bank open and went down to the store and bought a bunch of candy and then came to me and said, I've used all my money for candy, now I need more money. And I looked at him and said, it sounds like a pretty poor choice to break your piggy bank open and spend all your money on candy and not have any money for the things you want to buy right now. And so I would encourage the city council, I'll be talking to the public hearing part of this also, to, how do I say this? I would encourage the city council to, instead of rewarding the city attorney for spending money on something that was unfounded, thereby giving him more money, which I didn't see what it was allocated for or see the need for, or really see a justification for why the money that was allotted in the budget wasn't adequate for the full year. I would encourage you to, at that point, say we're not going to approve this supplemental budget and give you more money to use. The third item is our new council member, Mr. Anderson, and welcome to the council, has made the comment several times that the people spoke when they voted down the ordinance, or the two ordinances with regards to VRDs that the council passed. And I would like to clarify that when people vote a referendum, they in fact take what the council has passed and say no. They don't have the opportunity to actually make statements or add anything to that referendum. And so for the council to say, because people voted down something that was long and cumbersome, because I've heard people say that they voted against it just simply because they couldn't understand it or they thought that it was too complex. I've heard people say they voted it down because they didn't agree with it. And I've heard people say they didn't vote because they didn't understand it at all. And so to conclude that the people spoke and they want us to enforce the existing ordinance, which said accessory use that was being interpreted for the last years as whatever somebody asked for, even in excess of 180 days, then to come back and say, well, now that the people have spoken, we're going to affect the economy of the City of Lincoln City and the budget of the City of Lincoln City by reducing what was being practiced by the City of Lincoln City down to 90 days is a big assumption. And so for the people watching on TV, I agree. I don't think that's why you voted, and I don't think we can make that assumption. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Anyone who did not sign up who would like to speak?
Hi, I'm Bill Saunders, and I apologize for not signing up. The first time I've been here, I didn't realize the procedure.
It's all right. I'm guilty of that, too.
Okay. First, I want to thank you guys. I really appreciate you taking the time in your personal lives to serve the community. I appreciate that. And I know that you're all doing the best you can, and I want you to know that I appreciate that as well. Okay. I do want to, he mentioned vacation rentals, and that's one thing I wanted to speak to tonight, because I think there's a misperception related to vacation rentals that they compete with motels and hotels. They do not. They don't at all. They don't cross over. We have completely different clientele between the two. For example, my brothers and sisters and I every year go to a different geographic area and spend 4 days together. If we can't find a vacation rental, we don't want a motel. We want to be together in a family situation where we can interact, play games, and talk. And so if we can't find a vacation rental in that area, we move to another geographic area. So they don't cross over. People who stay at motels, hotels are generally looking for a clean room every night, and they want some place to sleep. The people who go for vacation rentals are looking for a family situation where they can interact and do something. For example, last weekend, 3 sisters, this is the 2nd year in a row, rented my home because they like to get together and bake. You can't do that in a motel room. I have a lady from Bend who comes every year and cooks her Thanksgiving dinner at my house while the family watches TV. You cannot do that in a motel. I bet the number of people who cross over is 1 or 2 at the most. So what I would suggest is, I went to the city and asked if we could find out how much the accommodation tax comes from vacation rentals versus motel-hotel. I think it would be very interesting for the council to understand the financial impact on the city of Lincoln City if we close down vacation rentals. Because those people won't move to your motel. They'll move to another town. And I would bet that the financial impact is pretty significant, because I know when my family goes, we eat at the restaurants, we buy at the groceries, we buy souvenirs, we even garage sale. Buy at the garage sales. You know, so these people are spending money, and they will move to another town if there's not adequate vacation rentals here. So I would really strongly suggest that we put a little bit of analysis into that, figure out back from the taxes into about how many people are we impacting, and see what the financial impact is to the city of vacation rentals, because they don't cross over. They're very different types of people who stay in one versus the other. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming forward. Appreciate it. Anyone else who did not sign up?
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Robert Harrison. I'm the pastor of Agape Fellowship. 2 weeks ago at the council meeting, I brought up a request about reinstating the invocation. And since then, the News Guard put a poll, an electrical poll, on to whether or not people wanted the invocation. And I was just curious. I don't know the procedure that the City Council goes through, if you pay attention to the polls or not. But it was obvious in the poll there was way, way more people wanted invocation than those that did not. It was more than double. And I didn't see the final outcome because after a certain time they take it off. But it was very obvious that many people wanted invocation. And I just wanted the City Council aware of it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming out. Anyone else? Are you coming forward, Mr. Beasley, or just stretching? Okay. All right. Then we're going to move ahead.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
May I make a comment?
Please.
Regarding the Oregon Government Ethics Commission complaint authorized by the City Council of Lincoln City and filed with the Commission against Mayor Williams, I believe we have valid and legitimate grounds supporting the Council's decision to file this complaint. I also believe it is Council's duty to inform the Commission when we believe ethics violations have occurred. Even though the Commission concluded that our allegations did not warrant further investigation, fact remains that initiating the complaint was not a frivolous pursuit. I do not believe the money spent pursuing this matter has been misspent. 6 of the 7-member council voted to file the complaint based on substantive concerns and to spend the funds required to do so. I stand behind this decision. Once again, I want to stress the fact that it was the council that decided to act, and we are responsible for the outcome. The city attorney has no vote on this council and deserves no blame for actions taken by the council.
Thank you so much. Nope. But thanks anyway. Okay, so we're going to move on here. That takes care of that fun part. Public hearings, public comment. We have a public hearing and an opportunity for public comment, testimony on the creation of a reimbursement district for sewer installation on Northeast 19th Street. Do I have a script for that?
Yes. It's green.
Green. I cannot tell you how great Kathy makes life here. She knows my limitations. Okay, so I've got a nice long piece of paper to read here, so bear with me. It is now 6:18 p.m. The public hearing is now open for the purpose of accepting public input on the formation of a reimbursement district to reimburse the City of Lincoln City for the cost of constructing a low-pressure sewer within the Northeast 19th Street, Northeast 19th to Northeast or Sanitary Sewer Reimbursement District. This hearing is held pursuant to Lincoln City Municipal Code, Chapter 13.06. Are there any objections to the council's jurisdiction? Seeing none. Councilors, are there any abstentions or disqualifications based on conflict of interest, personal bias, or ex parte communications? Seeing and hearing none. The process for forming reimbursement districts is found in Municipal Code, Chapter 13.06. Pursuant to Sections 13.06.030, the City Council shall hold an informal public hearing in which the persons impacted by the creation of the reimbursement district shall be given the opportunity to comment thereon. After the staff presents a report, any person may speak up for up to 3 minutes. If we have questions, your time responding will not be counted in your time limit. If you wish to speak, please write your name and mailing address clearly on the sign-up list at the entrance, which I have here. Please speak directly in the microphone and begin by stating your name only. If you have written testimony to submit into the record, please provide it to our city recorder. And will the staff please present its report?
Good evening. The city received a request for sanitary sewer service in an area that currently is only served by septic systems. This request came from someone whose current septic system is failing. Since we now are using E1 pressure lines, this area was determined that we could serve this area with an E1 pressure line. And so we're proposing that we serve this area by establishing a reimbursement district. And the way that would work is that the city would install a low-pressure sanitary sewer system, and then the applicants, when and if they wanted to connect to the sewer, would then pay back the city for constructing the line. So we sent out notices for the public hearing and sent notices to the property owners that could receive benefit. The project would be funded from the interfund loan from the unbonded assessment fund budget, which is the amount budgeted each year for these types of purposes. The estimated cost of this sewer line is $50,700. That's the estimated construction cost. We're designing this in-house. We did have it surveyed. We are going to have it surveyed for the design purposes, but we're not having a consultant design this, so that's the bare bones cost. The potential lots that could be served, right now there's 8 lots. There could potentially be 12 lots if each lot divided based on the pattern in that neighborhood that's already divided to 5,000 square feet. So some may divide, some may not, but there's a potential of 12 lots benefiting. So we divide the total cost of the project by those 12 potential lots, and then when and if they want to connect to the sewer, they pay the city back, and it would come out to an estimated $4,225 per connection.
I'm sorry, did you say 44?
$4,225.
Thank you.
So, so we didn't hear anything back from the property owners we mailed notices to, except for we did receive a public testimony from the owner that initiated this request. I did include that in my staff report. This is one of these areas that's, so it's between Northeast Orr and Northeast Port on Northeast 19th. So it's that whole segment that would be sewered, about 400 feet. And it's in an unsewered area, like I said, one of areas that are close in, close to walking and biking distance from amenities. So we feel this is a really good investment to make in forming this district.
Mr. Mayor? Yes. A question, Stephanie. When I looked over the list of the 8 property owners that are shown in the transmittal, I didn't see the name of the initiator of this project to begin with. So my question is, if someone pays off the assessment ahead of time, their name wouldn't appear on this list. Is that correct?
Well, so this won't be an assessment. This is just difference from a local improvement district and this reimbursement district. So what would happen is when they wanted to connect, they would pay that $4,000 connection fee. But the property owner, so whoever the property owner is at that time would pay that fee. But the person who initiated is number 1 owner on the list. He's the first, I don't have it labeled here, but he's the tax lot owner number 2700. His mailing address is not the same as the property address, but he's Mr. Smith. Aaron Smith is the one who initiated the request.
Well, I thought Brian Green was the one who initiated this whole process.
Well, this one is completely different. This was
just for the reimbursement district, and he's not part of that. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, this was a totally different person. Yeah.
So I guess I'm a little confused because does that mean then that Brian Green can't come in later on, or anybody else who doesn't appear here can't come in later on?
Your Honor? This is a different area of town.
It's totally different. You're thinking the Voyage development, I think. The LID and the Voyage.
Oh, my gosh, you're right. This is 19th Street. Okay, I'm totally on another page.
It's okay. Good looking out, though. Good looking out.
Mr. Mayor, I did have a question.
Okay, just if I think Mr. Appicello.
I'm sorry.
Did that cover it?
Just I was going to point out this was a reimbursement district and no lien was imposed, and it's a different area of town. So.
Okay. Mr. Ryan?
You did say a low-pressure system. Is this like a gravity feed?
This is a low-pressure sewer system like the LID, the Lake Voyage Local Improvement District. It's the same technology, yeah. I may have even referred to that, yes.
Okay,
they will have pumps.
If they connect, they have to put in a pump then on top of that $4,000.
Correct. So they'll have to pay their on-site pump costs, the installation of those pumps, the decommissioning of their septic tanks, and the system development charges. So all those costs, on-site costs, we estimated those for the local improvement district to be about $16,000.
Right, okay.
That includes SDC. So that would be roughly the same cost this property owners would need to spend on their property side.
Okay.
To connect to the sewer.
So there is no, I'm familiar with the area, I thought that we had a gravity feed down Port Avenue there.
We have the gravity feed down Port, there is no sewer in Port.
Oh, okay. I thought that we had at one time talked about putting one down Port, so that's where I got confused. Okay.
This would be an alternative to that whole approach.
Okay. Yeah, gotcha.
Sewer that area.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Stephanie, wasn't there a similar finance district in the Lake Voyage? Wasn't that the conclusion done? Yeah. So I guess my question is, what's different between this one and that one?
So the Lake Voyage was financed by a local improvement district. And those property owners in that district that council formed are assessed a certain amount each month for those improvements. They don't have a choice. Whether they connect or not, they're getting assessed for their proportionate share of those improvements. With the creation of a reimbursement district, in this case, the city installs the line and the homeowners pay back the city to connect to for their proportionate share of installing that line.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Stephanie, on page 4 of the resolution, draft resolution, page 4, line 21, letter D, in the second sentence, the city is not obligated to collect the reimbursement fee from affected property owners.
The language that's in there, it has to do with the length of the project. For example, I think it says except as provided in this section. We basically have no obligation to collect the reimbursement except as provided in the ordinance, which means that if you go past the 10-year period, there is no obligation unless there's been a valid extension.
In letter D, there's no exemption made, Mr. Apicello.
Okay. I don't know where it is now. Apologize, Mike.
Well, the municipal code 1306065 talks about payment of the reimbursement fee. And so he's saying outside of that requirement, we're not obligated to collect. And the way...
Chester, could you tell me what section again?
Section D.
Section 6.
Section 6, that's right. And
so the sentence that reads, the applicant agrees that except as provided in LCMC 1306065, obligation to pay reimbursement fee, the city is not obligated to collect the reimbursement fee from affected property owners.
I stand corrected. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah. Stephanie, normally I do this in private, so I don't publicly disclose my ignorance. I'm having trouble with the difference between an LID with the reimbursement with the financing attached, and then the reimbursement district. Can you explain to me?
So with the reimbursement district, no one pays to connect. No one pays toward the improvement until they're ready to connect to the sewer. The city builds that line, and the city basically carries the cost of installing that line. Whereas the local improvement district, all of the property owners paid for that line. They paid for the line, and in the other case, they paid for the paving, which, so yeah, so they're already paying for those improvements. And that gets assessed and recorded on their property. With the reimbursement district that we're doing, there's no recording on the properties. They just only trigger a payment back to us when they want to connect to the sewer.
I got it. Thank you.
Anyone else?
And within 10 years?
Mm-hmm.
So it begs the question, if only one person hooks up in a 10-year period of time, we, the city, fronted a sewer system at $46,000 rather than $50,000 because we got one reimbursement.
That is a risk if no one can, yeah, that's true, that could happen.
So I guess I'm trying to figure out, since it's in the ground and functioning, and at some point, you know, our desire as a municipality is to move septics onto sewer, why is there a 10-year drop-off? Why is it not forever?
Well, there is the idea was to renew it every 10 years and bring it back to council at the end of 10 years to see if council wants to renew these districts. So I think that was, the reason was 10 years is a reasonable amount of time to look out and see, you know,
And can council bring that up, or does that have to be brought forward by a property
Well,
owner?
we haven't had that come up yet. It would be brought back by, the reimbursement districts were limited to 10 years. We've done one. The person, in that case, it was a developer who fronted the money. He built the line, and when people connect, they pay him back their portionate share. Now, if he gets to 10 years, he can come back to council and say, I've only had half the connections, I'd like to extend this 10 years, and council can say yes. In this case, we would come back as being our own developer and say, let's extend this 10 years, we've only had X connections, we think there's more
Your Honor.
potential.
Sir?
Paragraph E on page 4 of the resolution specifically states that it's a 10-year period, but also says the council may extend the reimbursement period on its own motion as provided in the code. So we've provided for that. There's a 10-year period because most of the time it's a private applicant, and you don't have to extend it. Private applicants could ask that you extend it. But in this case, the city is being essentially the developer, and as long as someone calendars it, we can bring it back and ask for an extension.
Okay. Do we have anything in motion that says there's a sewer line in your street, now your septic has failed, you don't get to put in a new one, you must connect? Do we have something like that?
There is a requirement, I think, that upon failure, if a line is available, but I'm not sure it applies to the pressure sewer, and I know we've talked about amending the code to make it clear you had a connection requirement. I think it's one of the ordinances we talked about doing as part of the LID package.
Right, I remember that.
Yeah, another difference between the reimbursement district and local improvement district is we can put those provisions on the local improvement district, and so we know we won't allow someone to build a septic in that district. Here, we do need to work on an ordinance, a resolution to
Mr. Henderson, you look like you've got
address that.
something to add there.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out, since it's us, why, I still don't understand why we can't do a 100-year term instead of, since we're the ones who are, we, the city, are funding the funds, then we avoid that 10-year roll, because why wouldn't we keep it in place, interest is running, until we're paid back? And I guess I'm still, much to your point, Mayor, where's the notice that says, you do have to hook up?
Right.
Rather than putting $20,000 into a new septic system, it's in front of your house, hook up. The difference I see is we wouldn't be putting a date certain with, they all have to be hooked up by, 15 years or something.
Right.
That could run on forever, but.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Does not this program create a lien for each piece of property that's in the district?
Your Honor, the answer is no. No lien is imposed. There is, however, a recording of a notice, I believe, but there's no lien.
Does that follow the property? So if the property is sold, the new property owner has that debt?
I believe we are providing a recording of the resolution or something that gives notice that there is a reimbursement district. I think that if you're interested in changing the 10-year period, we probably need to change the ordinance, because the ordinance says it is a 10-year period and it's subject to renewal. There's also the fact that we do not have to adopt the reimbursement district prior to construction. So the city has funds in its unbonded assessment fund and has the ability to do sewer projects. And after completion of that project, we can do this. So we have time to amend the ordinance if you'd like to do that first. So there's really no prohibition on, as long as we have budgeted funds and the council approves the project, we can actually do the project and come back and impose the cost through this reimbursement district later. And that might be a good time also to do the ordinance with the mandatory connection.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
The trouble I have with that is I think Stephanie gave us a heads up. Only the applicant has made the application, the others haven't said anything. And in reading it, when I see, the 10-year drop-off, and then to change that, the other owners might be here this evening if they knew it was ongoing. So I guess to make it clear, I want to help facilitate sewer in the street, all that kind of stuff, but I don't think the city's looking to put in a $50,000 line and only get $4,000 back at a worst-case scenario. So somehow we need to connect the vehicle that gets all the septics onto the pressurized system. If we can figure that out,
Well, I guess I'd have to ask a historian about this. Do you have any thoughts of why we have that 10-year number in there? Was it just kind of arbitrary?
I think, as Richard mentioned, and I hadn't thought of it, it's normally, well, when the resolution was created to allow us to establish reimbursement districts, it was really driven by developers who didn't want to invest and then have people come back later and connect and they invest in. So it did make sense more from a private developer, 10 years.
I understand.
But I see the...
Mr. Mayor, I can't speak specifically as to why this is in the ordinance, but I can speak to this issue. Payback agreements, which is what this is, are typically done through the development process. And the purpose of them is to allow a developer to be paid back for the investment that they're doing. Now, there's also a tracking difficulty that the city then has to track these, and then there also becomes a fairness issue, and to the people that are going to be hooking on, that they're also going to be, if they don't hook on within a 10-year period, the line's a little bit older, and so with all of that, I've never seen a payback agreement for a private developer without a cutoff time, and they're usually between 7 and 10 years. And so the provisions that Stephanie is discussing really are for private development. And now, as Richard has talked about, if we want, where we are now, we're really taking an ordinance that is designed for private development and trying to fit us into it. If we need to take some time, Mr. Apichello has discussed how to do that in both the changing of the ordinance and then the changing of this agreement, thereby putting in provision that eliminates the time frame and also that requires that at some point in time the property owners would have to hook up into the system. But as he mentioned, that would require some ordinance work as well.
And do we see a need for a difference between private and public development, to keep it 10 for private and unlimited for public?
Yes, and the difference is that in a private development, it's the profit motive that you're looking at. And so it's a way for the person to make sure that he is not losing.
We would want to keep that for private.
Well, for private, oh yes, we absolutely want to keep that for private. In our case, there's no profit motive. This is essentially, we are acting as the financial agency for a group of people, and the benefit to us is to have them on sewer systems, our own sewer system. So that's the real distinction between whether it's a developer or the city, is that we simply don't have a profit motive associated with it.
And then
we just want to recoup our costs.
I'm sorry. Sorry, Mayor. Is that something that can be done? We don't have a claim of, that's what I'm looking for.
I think the ordinance, as it is written, contemplates that it can be either used for private developers or for city, because the definition of applicant includes corporations. We're a municipal corporation, and frankly, the city of Grants Pass, I believe this ordinance takes a lot from their ordinance. We drafted this only like 2 years ago. And they regularly do projects, such as what's being proposed, and then ask for reimbursement over time. And they simply track, and when 10 years comes up, if they haven't recovered sufficient funds, they renew it. They may not. The council may decide not to renew if it's a private developer. If, for example, they the private developers recovered 70% of what they expended, they might just let it go. They may, however, extend it. And I believe I've seen ordinances extending reimbursement districts for grants passed. So it's just one of those creative mechanisms we can use to fund public infrastructure or get it funded either by a private party or by the city, and to recover our costs over time. I don't really think we need to amend the ordinance because we've got a 10-year provision with an allowance for extension. We just have to track it. And as the city manager says, it does take time, and we have to make sure we don't. You can make mistakes when you have to track something 10 years, and so as long as we have a good program to track it, we should be able to handle it.
And do we?
Well, I guess, Mr. Mayor, the point that I was bringing up, if you want to eliminate that provision for the city and just leave it open-ended, then as I understand it, that would require an ordinance change. Now, you asked, do we have a good tracking mechanism? Yes. However, that's 10 years down the road. In all likelihood, there will be changes in staff and things that institutional memory gets lost along the way. So yes, we can track things, but I'm not good at predicting 10 years down. I can't even predict 10 days down the road. So.
And then I have a question I hope is not too silly. Do these have value? Can these be sold? If say we're not getting the hookups we want, is that something that someone would buy or an investment?
I don't think anybody's ever asked that question.
Well, there you go.
Sell an assessment district or reimbursement district.
I'm not aware of that ever happening.
Okay, so I said it might have been a silly question, but if
So you're talking about secondary market?
Yeah, exactly. Get our money back on that. Let someone else have it, but that's just. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
As this stands now, would somebody be able in that area, that district, to install a new septic instead of connecting to sewer?
Yes.
And if
I
we
guess.
wait and change the ordinance before we adopt this reimbursement district, then we wouldn't have that problem?
I guess I'd recommend that if you're concerned that you want to make it mandatory, I think we postpone doing this. You can still go ahead and construct the improvement, but the imposition of the reimbursement district can wait until after we adopt that connection.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Are you done?
Yes, I am.
Well, I think that while, we're talking about a specific area here at the moment, I think the ordinance should be changed that would help eliminate the septic system still within the city, and there are a number of them. With the I guess caveat that if an LID district can't be put together or a reimbursement district can't be put together, then they could be, I suppose, granted a permit to renew their septic. But if, for the most part, I think that it should read somehow that, when your septic fails, you're going to have to connect. Because I don't see it any other way that we're going to ever get all of this connected unless we impose that. And I know that's an imposition, and I know it can be expensive, but I happen to live in one of those areas where we had, that's when the county still owned part of it, and we had septic systems flowing on top of the ground. So I think it's something that we need to do as a city is impose that you must connect to a sewer, whether you form an LID or a reimbursement district. When your septic system fails, you have to get it sewered. And I don't know how you would phrase that into an ordinance.
I believe we've already discussed doing this ordinance. It's not really a reimbursement district ordinance. It's more a pressure sewer ordinance to clarify that I believe there's a requirement you have to connect within 120 days if sewer is available. We just needed to amend our code to make it clear that also applies to pressure sewer systems.
That's correct.
And so that's where we were with the last time you gave direction on this issue, was to bring back an ordinance now, because we are in the process, actually haven't started constructing that Voyage Lake LID. We didn't rush it back, but it is on the list to come back. So you can go forward with this, but it might be better to bring forward the ordinance change first, so that people have notice that once it's there, if one of those triggers are met, remember we talked about different triggers for connection, then they'd have to hook up.
Okay, so just so I'm super clear what we're doing here tonight, we could keep the public comment open, but not then ask you to draft a new...
We could continue with the reimbursement district this evening, but we could also come back in another hearing. We do have this is an advertised hearing, so I guess you need to invite people to come to the podium. But if you wanted to, you could not take action on this tonight and postpone it, and we could adopt an ordinance just to make it clear that if there is a pressure sewer in front of your property, you're going to need to connect.
Do you see any huge imposition on people if we do that?
No, I think that's a good way to go.
And again, I don't think it stops the city from proceeding with the actual construction. It's just that we won't have a reimbursement district in place. And I think staff was bringing it forward as one package, project and reimbursement district as one.
Is council comfortable with that?
Well, we would need authorization to spend money on design and advertise for construction while we were re-noticing the public hearing. Or we just keep this public hearing, yeah, because you have to, my question is, would we have to re-notice the public hearing if we did that change?
I would, because I think the continuance would be more than, a month. So.
Okay, well then we may ask to come back for construction. We were sort of in a hurry. This person's system has failed, and we were a little bit behind, even where we want to be. So just to keep the ball rolling, we'll pursue the design.
I can commit to bring the ordinance back at the next meeting if you want to do that, and if you just want to postpone this for 1 month, we can do that.
But you can continue with the construction.
We'll continue design and advertise for construction.
Right. Okay.
And we may come then, before we award the construction award, we'll...
All right, then what do you need from me?
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I would move that we postpone authorizing and establishing the 19th Northeast 19th Street Reimbursement District, Resolution 2015-29.
Mr. Mayor, before you take a second on that, you still are in a public hearing, and you haven't taken comments yet from the public.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Appreciate it. Some difficult questions. Does any member of the audience wish to speak on this proposal? Please come forward, sir. Paul, were you signed up on this one? Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
Oh, hi.
Sheet in front of me.
My name is Aaron Smith. I live here in Lincoln City, and my property is actually the subject of the reimbursement district.
Okay, you're a big guy, so try to stay close to your microphone there.
Okay, so my property at 1843 Northeast 19th is actually the subject of the reimbursement district. I've owned the house for over 20 years. It's been on septic, and it's not very optimal anymore. So I had approached Public Works about what to do. And actually, I was going to go ahead and just put in a line for my property and make my own reimbursement district. However, the cost for one person to do that is quite great. I got an engineer report that estimated about $35,000 or $6,000. And even in a reimbursement district, my cost, just my cost, will be $6,000 for the system and development charge, an estimate of about $4,200 for the reimbursement district portion, $5,000 for an E1 Pro pump, and then I have to go into my property and hook it all up and, some excavating and stuff. I guess, I'm sorry, I thought the meeting started at 7, so I literally just got here about 10 minutes ago. So, anyway, so as I listened to this, I was not quite sure if we were talking about automatic hookup being triggered by a failing system, which would be the case for me. However, for the city now, you have 12 properties on this street that are affected by this. I think the costs that I saw were about $50,000. Immediately, you would get 6 plus 4 back from me. You'd cover 20% just on one project. When I bought my house, I was able to purchase the lot next to it for a good price because septic was not an option at a 50 by 100 lot at the time. So now I have a 100 by 100 lot, which I always thought that I would put another house on at some point in the future when sewer came in. So I'm hoping that this is the time. I don't know if I'm ready to put another house in right now, but anyhow, so as a city, if you're looking at this as I'm looking at it as it's a kind of a necessity for me. And I have waited the whole dry season. At one point, I was actually going to I looked into septic options, and I can do a septic, I think, a pressurized septic up to my upper lot for far less than I can to wait to do a pressurized E1 Pro system. However, I strongly want to be on the sewer system because I've been on the septic system for years. Anyhow, yes, people do have septic options, perhaps. I have an upper lot that I can go to, but I would rather be on a sewer system despite the higher cost, because then it also gives me an option, personally, besides just the sewer preference. It gives me an option to develop my upper lot. Okay, so if you're doing the math on that, as far as what's the city going to get, they're immediately going to get 20% of the cost of the project just from my lot hooking up. Okay. At some point, if I do the other lot, that's another 20%. And the 2 properties below me, there's 3 potential lots that are completely undeveloped. One of the houses across from my lot has an ancient septic tank that is, well, let's see. I don't want to give them away, but it's pretty ancient. So, besides in this case me being the property owner at risk, I guess. Number one, there's development potential for the city. They're going to get their money back with, if I'm going to be 10,000 plus, that's 20% of your outlay, and others will hook up over time. You'll also get the the sewer bill, and you'll get also development costs, and besides what I think is a good economic thing for the city, the city has always shown an interest in getting the septics out of the way, and also for the health of the lake, the Devils Lake Water Improvement District. In the summer, I read an article that said, well, we really don't want to have people put in a septic system that's going to be there for 30 or 40 or 50 years. I'm going
to cut you off now, but thank you so much. And I think we were in agreement that we do want to see homes hooked up.
Okay. Okay, so I just hope that you would establish this and go forward with the project.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Sure. Mr. Robertson. All good. That buzzer will sneak up on you every time. Well, there'd be a test.
Thank you. My name is Paul Robertson. I'm the manager of the Devils Lake Water Improvement District here in Lincoln City. Devils Lake Water Improvement District supports the implementation of cost-effective opportunities for sewer in the watershed and provides the following supplemental information as part of this hearing. Data from that you're seeing in front of you is from the 2009 survey of Lincoln County's on-site records. Records show that of the 7 parcels in the proposed reimbursement district, which had been developed by 2009, 3 parcels had no septic record on file, and thus predate the beginning of permitting for on-site systems in 1974. This would make them at least 41 years of age and likely well beyond their useful life. A further 3 others that were developed between 74 and 1999, one property and then one property that was developed in 2000 being at least 15 years old. There's an 8th parcel, and I think you've heard a little bit about that, identified in this reimbursement district that was undeveloped, at least at the time, and I believe so is the case. So there aren't any septic records, of course. As shown in Table 1, which you have in front of you, of the 3 permitted between 74 and 99, the 30 and 40-year-old systems, as they would be, were reportedly constructed with steel tanks. They have a high susceptibility to failure, steel tanks do. The 93 constructed system was constructed with more durable plastic. Plastic is, again, more durable, but it also has limited life. Steel tanks can last between 7 and 12 years, and certainly after 25, they're pretty much rendered useless.
Is that technically steel? Is it, what am I trying to say? Oh, come on. Frying pans. Cast iron. Are these a cast iron, or is it, what's the actual
composition? I believe they're like mild steel and painted. Oh. And typically, that's why one of the reasons they're so vulnerable. If they're scratched, all of a sudden they're like rusted. They start rusting immediately. Because
how thick are they?
So,
how thick are they? I'm sorry to quiz you, but I've never heard of a steel one.
I don't honestly know the exact thickness of typical septic.
Thanks, I'm sorry.
Similar to like a drum, though, I would assume. So, let me just get my spot here again. Sorry, my eyes are failing on me here. Okay, so yeah, likely beyond their useful life at 25 years for sure. Figure 1 portrays how much of what this looks like graphically. You can see there's 3 systems there were no records. They're pre-74. There's the 3 that have records within the 74 to 99 parameters, and then the most recent one in 2000. And then also the data would also represent that. I'm sorry here. From the data, it would appear that nearly all the properties, including the undeveloped properties, should it develop, would benefit from the opportunity to hook up to sewer in the near term, and that within 10 years, even the worst or the newest constructed systems may be candidates for connection. However, tanks are just one component of a system. Figures 2 and 3 relay the soil suitability of septic systems. Notably, none of the soils are known to be suitable, and in fact, all parcels in the whole of the Devil's Lake watershed, which is pretty resounding, are labeled as very limited for use in septic systems for either corrosion potential, depth to saturation zone, or slope. Properties in the proposed area are subject to multiple limitations, including steep grade, and thus would, from an environmental sense, preferably develop or redevelop with the advantage of a municipal sewer. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Again, I apologize for interrupting.
That's okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. Oh, and I would point out, and I believe that DEQ, and it may be that it is just your ordinance that isn't aligned with that if there's available sewer, pressurized or otherwise, my understanding is within 300 feet, there's a requirement to connect if there's a repair or a failure. So
look into that.
Yeah.
Get that in line. Thank you so much. Anyone else who did not sign up would like to speak on this matter? All right. Well, now I think we go to Mr. Ocean. Oh, wait, do I have to close the public testimony? I'm sorry. Yeah? Okay, I'm so sorry. We're going to get this right here. Is there any, if there's no further testimony, is there a motion to close the public hearing on the record?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, then, what is the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I would move that we postpone authorizing and establishing the Northeast 19th Street Reimbursement District pursuant to LCMC Chapter 13.06, reimbursement to City of Lincoln City.
A second?
Second.
Discussion, do we have a time certain that we are going to postpone it?
I think you said you could get by the next meeting?
I said the ordinance would come back at the next meeting. I thought you had said earlier 1 month, but did I miss that?
I think that was Stephanie's time, wasn't it?
I did not hear a time.
I heard something about a month, too.
A time
A
certain.
motion for continuance if you really want to continue this hearing. The hearing's over, but if you want to continue deliberations to a time and date certain, it'd be helpful to indicate that.
All right.
I would amend my motion to include time and date certain. Being
Excuse me.
our next city council meeting?
If you'd like to do that.
That would be November 9?
Or should we give it a little extra time so we can get the other one?
Whatever your pleasure. You've got the 9th and the 23rd.
Mr. Appicello, do you have a preference?
You know, we can adopt the ordinance on the 9th. It won't be effective for 30 days, but obviously there won't be any connections occurring, and there won't be any constructed improvements. So I think you're safe if you want to just move this along and push me to bring back that ordinance at the next meeting. I'm okay with going to the next meeting.
Okay, so the 9th?
November 9th.
We include that construction should go forward?
I heard Stephanie ask for that, but you could make a separate motion to authorize that.
Okay, so separate motion on that. Okay, so discussion finished?
You need a second on the
Oh, we
amendment.
did. We have a second down here.
Second is amended.
Right, and then the discussion. And do I need a roll call on that, or just a voice?
You'll need a roll call on the next one if.
Okay, so then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And now a second motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I would make a motion to direct Public Works staff to continue the sign and advertise for the pressure sewer line on Northeast 19th Street.
That's satisfactory. Okay, we have a motion, second discussion. Roll call, please.
Who seconded that?
I do.
Thank you. Walke?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Norikis?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
And Sprague?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. And then I think, Mr. Chandler, this is your turn to change.
Yes, we have advertised for a public hearing for the long-term franchise agreement with Pacific Power. However, we did not get that advertised properly, so we are recommending that if there's any here who would like to comment, that you go ahead and allow them to comment, but when there's time to take action, to continue the public hearing until the next meeting so that we can advertise that properly.
Okay. Anyone here who wanted to speak to the matter of Ordinance 2015-11 Lincoln City Pacific Core franchise? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion to continue.
So moved.
Second.
Motion, a second. Discussion? Can I just do an all?
Just one. I know that Doris Johnson probably came here from the valley for this meeting, and we need to apologize to her for coming all the way over here for this thing, and now we postponed it.
Thank you. I apologize. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Chandler. Now we move along. Skip that, we skip that. Ordinance, Okay, so we're at the public hearing part, an opportunity for public comment on proposed resolution 2015-27, adopting a supplemental budget for fiscal year 2015-2016. I don't have anything in, did you give me a script on that?
No, I did not, but if you could just read that one, Debbie is ready to help you out there.
The green one?
No, for just read the agenda item itself.
Oh, okay, so that's what I did. Okay, it's a public hearing, opportunity for public comment on proposed resolution 2015-27, adopting a supplemental budget for fiscal year 2015-16. Do I need anything more than that?
Report.
Is the public hearings open?
Right, well, yeah, I guess I can do that little part here. It's now 7:08 p.m. The public hearing is now open for the purpose of accepting public input on the supplemental budget, Resolution 2015-27. Are there any objections to council's jurisdiction? Councilors, are there any abstentions, disqualifications based on conflict of interest, personal bias, or ex parte contact? Communications? After the staff report, any person may speak up to 3 minutes. If we have questions, your time responding will not be counted in your time limit. If you wish to speak, please write your name and mailing address clearly on the sign-up list, which I have. Please speak directly in the microphone. Begin by stating your name only. If you have written testimony to submit into record, please provide to the recorder. Will the staff please present its report?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. While I'm up here, if I might just take 1 minute to give an update on the microphones. Oh, Debbie Mamoni,
Thank you,
Finance Director. The project's underway. By our next council meeting, all the mics should be installed and functioning. Tony Lasoya, our IT manager, gave me a sample. This is one of the new microphones. It's got a little mute button that you can push. It also has a light that comes on when it's picking you up, so you can visually see when it's picking you up.
And they can be moved around.
And, yes, it's got a long cord.
Nice.
So. He also wanted to pass on, real big thanks to the building maintenance crew here. Have been really, really, really helpful in doing some of the wiring and just really going above and beyond. So,
great, thank you, and to them too.
Tonight, I have several budget change requests. Some of these on the list do require a public hearing. Not all of them do, but rather than do 2 resolutions, I just put them all on the public hearing one. I'll try to go through them pretty quickly if you'd like. Okay.
Your time, please.
First one involves the Water Construction Fund. It's a request to allocate another $1,151,965. It's in capital funds, primarily for the Cutler City and Taft water line projects. This money is going to be funded by 4 different sources. There'll be FEMA reimbursement of $125,000, which we don't currently have in our budget. The beginning fund balance in this fund is about $32,000 higher than what we had budgeted for, so that's an additional resource that we will use. We had budgeted to pay off the contract that we have with Lincoln County for the watershed that we had purchased. But we'll reduce and just make the normal payment. So we're reducing debt expense by $279,000, and then we'll be reducing the contingency that's budgeted in this fund by $715,000. I've rounded the numbers a bit. The second fund is the Street Capital Fund. We're asking to change materials and services to increase that by $503,000 and to increase capital outlay for $397,000. This is actually for several big projects going on in this fund. The first one, to allocate additional $100,000 to the Southwest Coast 11th to Bard project. To add $170,000 to the Logan Road Northeast 61st to Port Avenue project, to add another $145,000 for other overlay projects, to add $88,000 to the Storm Improvement Northwest 50th to 52nd project, to add $155,000 for Highway 101 and Northeast 22nd, the city part of that, and to add $242,000 to Northwest Harbor Avenue Phase 1, And this also has a couple different funding sources. Again, there's some FEMA reimbursement that we will receive, about $46,000. This fund also has a higher beginning balance than what we anticipated, of about $142,000. And we would also reduce the capital contingency in this fund by almost $712,000. That's how we would fund this. The next fund that we're requesting, actually the next two items involve a capital purchase that was originally budgeted for in the prior fiscal year 14-15. That purchase did not happen, and so the result of that is the beginning funds are higher. The beginning balance in these two funds are higher than what we had budgeted, and so we're just asking to appropriate that purchase in this fiscal year instead, and that is the Taft Elementary Sports Park. So in the Parks SDC fund, that'd be $125,000, again funded from the funds that we did not spend the prior year. And the Facilities Capital Fund would be $193,000 in capital, again for the Taft Sports Park. In the General Fund, we have a couple of requests. In fiscal year 14-15, we had the purchase of an emergency generator budgeted. That purchase did not happen. Those funds rolled into the fund balance, so we're asking to reappropriate that for this year. And actually the request is to provide funding for 2 emergency generators. We're also requesting additional funding for legal expenses for a couple items that we had not budgeted for, the public meeting litigation and also the investigation costs. And these 2 requests would be funded by the contingency in the general fund. And finally, the Water Operations Fund, this is just a request to move $9,000 from materials and services to capital. We had budgeted in this year to purchase 2 water purifiers. They were budgeted for in materials and services, but they're actually capital items, so we need to move the funding down to the capital line. It does not change the total budget in the water fund. Those are our list of requests. Any questions?
Could we have the remaining contingency amount in the water construction and the street capital fund?
The Water Construction Fund currently has a contingency of $768,000. So this would use most of that. It'd leave about $50,000 in there.
I think it was right around about $58,000.
And then
What was that, Mr. Chandler?
The ending contingency after these budget items was for the water construction was going to come in at about $58,000.
It does use most all of that. The Street Capital Fund currently has a capital reserve of $718,000, so this would use all but about $7,000 would be left.
Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Anderson?
Mamoni, this is a combination of reallocating and I guess it's all reallocating from someplace. I can't remember, so that's why I'm asking. When the Budget Committee passes a budget on to Council, I know Council is restricted, has restrictions as what it can do. It can't add to the expenses except for some percentage. This seems like a lot of movement, and I didn't put the pencil to it to what's really moving in. But does anybody track then on these supplemental budgets, are we in conflict with that reallocation percentage? And I apologize, I can't remember what the percentage was, but and maybe not here, but we still have more of a fiscal year going and more supplemental budget. So I'm concerned of that issue, and then how much of this is out of contingencies and.
So my understanding, there's actually two things that the council can't do. One of them is they can't change the property tax rate, and the other is the 10% comes to mind, but I can't.
Yeah, I had the same 10%, but I wasn't sure.
And that's a little odd because the rules that govern supplemental budgets that the council can do, once the year has started, aren't bound by that rule that what you could do the budget committee. So that's kind of a bit of a loophole, maybe. Most of these, the large majority of these dollars are coming from contingency to capital, so they're a shift from one category to another. But because there are some unbudgeted revenues that we're adding and some additional beginning fund balances, that requires a public hearing to add those in. And also the size of a couple of them are pretty large.
Mr. Mayor? Does that mean that in order to exceed the 10%, we would have to reconvene the budget committee during the year?
No, you're not required to do that.
Okay.
No, that's an excellent point, though, that Mr. Anderson's made, I think, that we should look at, and I don't know if it's too much work at this point to say, okay, what percentage of the budget does that comprise, and did we actually vote for one thing knowing the rules, and now it's just kind of being switched around through a procedural shift.
Mr. Mayor?
So we need to, yes.
If I might, just to give a little more clarification, when you're looking at these changes, there's two things that are associated with that. Some are a result of unanticipated revenues that came in. The fund balance was higher. We received a reimbursement that we hadn't planned on. Most of the rest of the largest amount we had set aside funds that were called capital reserves. They were budgeted for capital purposes, but they did not have a specific project associated with them. As you know, through over the last quarter, we've had some expenses for some construction projects that are much higher than we anticipated. And so what we are pulling from is a line item budgeted amount that is called additional capital reserves. So as I understand it, if those were unreserved, we would not have the ability to go pull those. And so in the budget process, we gave ourselves essentially what Mrs. Mahoney is calling a contingency. And in your budget, it's titled as additional capital reserves.
That's correct. If we have some fund balance that is not appropriated, we cannot change that later. This type of change, moving from contingency to capital, would be a change that you could make as part of the budget process, too. It does not violate the changes that you can't do to the budget committee. So it would be allowed in either case.
Yeah, I think it's, to get to your point, Mr. Anderson, was that we need to have that transparency, that people know that when we voted on a budget, we voted on a budget, and not, we sure did, but we're not really. But I think that explains it quite well, but I think it's important that we do keep that on the forefront. Yeah, thank you for that, Mr. Anderson. Appreciate it. Anything else?
Ms. Mahoney, under the general fund, last sentence, both requests are funded by reduction of the contingency budget. How much of a reduction is that?
$53,475.
And Mr. Chandler, given that we're reducing the contingency for the water construction fund by $700,000+, and the street capital fund by another $700,000+, how does that impact our position regarding those two?
The area where it impacts is really looking forward. Anytime you're able to carry a fund balance at the end of the year, you're able to carry that forward on additional projects. As I mentioned, because we've had some expenses that were higher than we anticipated, where it will affect us as we look to budgeting for next year or the year beyond.
So we'll continue to have a contingency, but it will be significantly smaller.
I would say it this way: we will continue to have a fund balance, but the beginning fund balance, which counts as a revenue, will be significantly smaller. Yes, I think we're saying the same thing.
And will that impact our ability to fund future projects?
It could.
Thank you.
And a quick question, maybe a procedural question, because I'm new to this here. Is this typically how requests are made in a lump like this, or do we normally get individual, or?
We, normally it depends. Some years there's more than others. We kind of pull them up and then bring several at a time rather than having one every other meeting or so.
Okay. Do we get to treat this like we do a consent agenda where we can pull items out?
You can change anything on here that you want to change, yes.
But I guess individually.
Yes.
On a consent, one of us can just pull it out. But on this, could I say, well, I don't want that, but we still have the vote?
Yeah, the thing that the procedure we really should do on this, especially when they're as large as they are, is that we really should hold a public hearing to amend the budget at the same time that you're approving the projects, especially if they're large projects. Mm-hmm. The position that you're in right now is that these projects have been approved and we've been moving forward, so this has become more of a formality. A better procedure for us to have done would be to have advertised the budget amendments, especially for the large ones. It's a pretty common practice if you have just small ones, a few $1,000s to lump them all together. But when they're as large as they are, with some of these, we should have amended the budget prior to, or at the same time you approve the project. Because at this point, the projects have been moving forward, and so this has become more of a formality.
Right, and that's my concern, and I don't want this to be anything more than it's just a statement. It's because we have a different style, something is different within this, and that would be the city attorney fund. This is not a reallocation. This is not a project that's going forward, so I'm just curious if this doesn't fit that template.
You're correct. Well, we have incurred some costs as it's associated with the attorney's fees. The $30,000 is an estimate of what those costs will be, but we have incurred costs.
And I understand. That's why I'm asking if maybe that's something we should consider separately from this, because it's not a continuation. It's not something that's already going, and it's not a movement of money. It's a new.
It's up to you. You can pull that out.
Again, back to Mr. Anderson's point, does that reach that threshold, for our budget, that we now change the budget? It's not a big concern. I'm willing to drop it.
The amount's well below the 10%, or whatever that percent is, because it's in the general fund, and the general fund budget is quite large.
Does anyone else have an issue with one lump vote? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Member of the audience wish to speak on this proposal? Hoover.
Mayor Anderson, members of the council, Jim Hoover again.
You did it. Mayor Williams.
Mayor Anderson, Mayor Williams.
I knew it was going to happen sooner or later.
Second Vice President Anderson.
We won't call him junior counselor.
Williams, with all due apologies. Members of the council, it must be getting late. 3150 East Devils Lake Road is my address, Jim Hoover. I started to hear the appropriate question I think that should be asked, but I wasn't sure I heard the answer. I guess I heard part of an answer, and that is, why are these additional appropriations needed? And I don't see in the information that was available on the public packet how these are as a percentage of the overall budget. So if we're asking for a $700,000 increase in an improvement, water, street, whatever it might be, did we already allocate $700,000, and are we 100% off in that budget line item? And I think that speaks towards, the wise use of our money, or the people that we have using our money, because I understand in construction, being in construction, that you might have a 5 or 10% cost increase due to weather, due to some condition that you find under the soil, or an increase in a product or a price, or some design change due to circumstances. But if you have a 100% increase, then it starts falling into the range of somebody missed the budget amount that they requested with this item, whether it was the engineer or the staff in the city of Lincoln City who put together an estimate, but somebody missed an estimate. And I don't see anywhere in these papers that we have available to us where there's a reference to how much we're off and why we need this extra money, whether it's a 5%, a 2%, a 15%, or 30%. Now, the one that I was able to look at, because it's not combined with a bunch of other items and it's easy to find in the budget, is the item referenced in the $30,000 of additional outside legal services that are being requested by the city attorney. And so I quickly pulled up, thanks to technology, the city budget. And the city budget on page 12 gives the city attorney amounts, and it shows last year and this year. And then I went to some of the other places, and on page 12 of the budget, if I can find it here, it says the total budget for the city attorney is $248,278. This is a 13.4% increase over the previous year, or $29,700. Then I went to page 42, see if I can flip to 42 here really quick, since I don't have a budget sitting in front of me. And on page 42, it actually shows a breakdown of the costs that we have in that line item. And I believe, if I'm looking at this correctly, in the previous budget year, we had $12,000 for outside legal services. And this year, we have a line item of almost $30,000 in the present budget. We're asking for another $30,000 over that line item. So that would be a 500% increase in legal services. Somebody said, is this a black op budget? Because we really don't know what we're spending these legal services on, these outside services. But I would suggest, if we're asking for a 500% increase, that the general public, the citizens of Lincoln City, deserve to know what their city attorney or what their city council is spending this 500% increase over last year. Now, it references in the thing, I think it says something legal regarding public meetings. And I've never heard anything in a public meeting talked about, so I have to assume this is something involving an executive session. So is this defense of something that happened in an executive session? And if it is, then I'd like it referenced correctly on the budget, since we're dealing with a 500% increase. Please look at this very closely. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. Anyone else? Seeing none. So if there's no further testimony, is there, oh wait, were we going to go for a close of this one? Yeah, okay. I'm getting confused by my motions. If there's no further testimony, is there a motion to close the public hearing and the record?
Motion to close public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah. One of the reasons for the increase in the budget from last year on attorney services was due to the fact that this year we had two of our unions that we had to, I guess, bargain with. One of them, the police union, we actually went to arbitration, which is quite a bit more expensive than what it usually is if you don't go to arbitration. And we're currently in the process of bargaining with the ASME union. That involves outside counsel, and that's one of the reasons why we had so much more this year than we did last year.
And if I could ask, did I misread your memo to us about where that funding was coming from? I thought it said the police department.
The funding for the police negotiation was in the police department budget, which was $20,000. That's how much we've spent.
And the Ask Me was from?
Was in the, is it a non-departmental? City administration.
Okay, so it wasn't covered under that.
It was not in the legal department's budget.
Well, the memo that you sent out to us showed us $25,000 in outside labor negotiations.
The $30,000 that's
not the additional. I'm talking about the initial in the budget. You sent out a memo to us and it showed a breakdown of the $30,000, and $25,000 of that was labor negotiation.
No, it wasn't.
That's what I read.
There was, the question that was, the two questions that were asked of me today, of which I sent out emails, was the breakdown of the $30,000 that's in the legal department, $25,000 of which is for the outside investigator, and $5,000 is which for defense on public meetings. Then the second question that I received is, where is the funds? Where are the funds that are located, and how much are they for the union negotiations? Around $20,000, if I recall, has been spent on the police union, and that is in the police budget. The other amounts, and I don't remember them off the top of my head, are in administration, and this is just since the fiscal year. And there was one that was $463 that was inadvertently put into the attorney's budget, but which is being transferred into administration because it was put in the wrong place.
And if I may read those numbers from your memos, is that fine? Okay. $1,965.65 for the Ask Me negotiation charge to city admin budget, $436.80 Ask Me negotiation charge to city attorney budget, but there's an amendment to that. $20,650.25 LCPEA negotiation charge to police. The $436.80 amount charged to the city attorney budget was recorded incorrectly and will be recorded as city administration budget.
Yeah, I inverted those figures. I apologize.
It's okay. That's why we asked the question. So I'm lost. Where are we at? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chandler, given that the City Council initiated the investigations, would it not be fair to charge some of the legal expenses to the City Council budget?
Yes, if you'd like to, you could.
I would like that. I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but I think that would be a fair approach.
I would agree to that.
I'm just a little bit lost. How do we do that? How much do we have? I don't know my numbers on this.
The thing that you could do on this one is that you have two estimates in that $30,000. One is for defense on public meetings. The other is $25,000 is the estimate for the cost for the outside investigator. If you want to put that $25,000 or even, well, yeah, the $25,000 into the city council budget, when you make a motion on this budget, just change that and say, instead of putting it into the legal, you would put it into the city council.
But do we have money in the city council budget to pay this?
No. The revenue.
It does really bad.
The revenues would.
Why not?
The revenues would be the same. They're both general fund budget items.
But if we don't have it in that budget, then we would have that 100% increase that we've been talking about. We can't do that. Or I guess we can't. We're reallocating.
Reallocating.
We're just pretending.
Right.
Why do we have a budget hearing?
As I mentioned.
This makes no sense to me.
Well, Mayor, it does to the fact of if you're trying to track your expenses, where the expenses are.
I understand.
But you're right. That's, we didn't, as council, we didn't anticipate having legal expenses.
We don't anticipate a lot of things. I'm just saying is,
right.
I'm not objecting to it. I'm objecting to, back to, again, what Mr. Anderson was saying. I think we just need that transparency. We need to change something in that budget process that says, okay, we realize these things happen, and maybe we need to tweak that somehow, make it clear to everyone that we're not finagling.
Mr. Mayor, both the city council budget and the attorney's budget are general fund budget items.
Okay.
So the revenue that it will be covering, the cost remains the same as a general fund revenue. What you really do, and that part of the budget amendment won't change. What changes is where you're allocating the expense. And so the general fund budget is made up of city council, attorney, administration, police, and so forth. And so what it will show when the audit is done at the end of the year is that in either the attorney's budget will be $30,000 higher, or the city council's budget will be $30,000 higher or $25,000 higher. So it's really where you want to allocate the expense, not the revenue.
And then, I'm sorry, I'll forget my question otherwise. Within that, then, do we put ourselves in jeopardy of not having money for something we need?
One clarification, if I might make, that the limits to the changes that council can make to budget after the budget committee apply to the fund, not to the department. Okay, and so you're talking 10% of the general fund is the amount of changes that you're allowed to make to a budget committee.
I see.
Okay, it's not. We do not have legal limits on line items within individual departments, or even between salaries and operations and capital within departments in the general fund. It's actually by the department as a whole is the actual legal limit. We have about, if I remember correctly, I believe it's about a $1.2 million contingency in the general fund. I don't know that $30,000 is. It might stop another $30,000 project. If we leave the budget as it is, we will have no budget for the remaining of the fiscal year for outside legal services, and that is an option if you want to look at that. We just would not be able to employ any outside legal services for the remainder of the year.
And our year ends?
In June 30th.
June 30th, okay. Okay.
Just one more comment.
Please.
Isn't the majority of the money that's in the budget for city council for going to conventions and that sort of thing, and when the League of Oregon Cities convention is already over? So I would think that there would be very little need for very much more funds between now and June 30.
City Council's total budget is $25,272, of which $10,072 is for information technology supplies. The training is $5,000. Meetings is $6,500. So between the two, there's $11,500.
So we would be giving up our entire budget?
Yes. Your entire budget is $25,272.
And if we have any expenses to incur beyond that?
You would have to amend the budget.
You do this again. But that's what it's for, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and it keeps it in front of the public,
Right.
and as well as the councilor. The other, and Mr. Norikis, I didn't mean to interrupt you if you were ready. Mr. Mayor, again, clarification, because I was fortunate enough to view some of the council meetings previous to coming on council, and these projects, when you deliberated them to get them from the budget to actual spending and approving, I recall very clearly the process you went through, and at that time you discussed the inability of the budget and the estimate and the shortfalls that were occurring. And as I recall, you beat it up pretty well, understood the expenses and why the estimate was lower than when the actual bid came in on these projects, and dealt with it. So this supplemental, contrary to the public testimony we had a minute ago, I think you've already addressed it. The timing could have been better. This could have gone, as Mr. Chandler indicated, with the project rather than waiting 2 or 3 months later to wrap them all up separately, and we've already forgotten, with the discussion that went on when you were faced with that project.
Okay. Mr. Norikis, did you have anything else to add?
No, thank you.
Okay. We lost Mr. Ward. Okay. Any further discussion? All right, then I guess it's time for a roll call.
We have to have an order.
Oh, I'm sorry, what?
We have a motion, I believe.
Correct.
Yeah, sorry, thank you. Sorry. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I would move that we accept Resolution 2015 -27 supplemental budget.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I would like to amend the resolution to take $10,000 of the $25,000 for outside investigator take that $10,000 from the city attorney's budget and move it to the city council budget.
So then we're going to change that to a $20,000.
15, I believe.
If we're giving him 10, but he wanted 30.
No, the 5 is for public meeting litigation.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you just said
25 for outside investigator.
Okay. Okay. Was that amendment, the second amendment?
Mr. Ryan, that was your motion.
I was making a motion about, if they want to make, that's a separate motion as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
So it needs a second if it's going to be voted on.
Now you completely confused
Yeah.
me.
It's an amendment to a motion. The motion has been seconded, so the amendment, unless the motioner accepts the amendment, which I don't, then it the amendment would require a second.
Okay, so we need to finish our first.
Right, the amendment
All right,
first.
that's where I'm at. Okay. So,
The amendment first, Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
okay. So we had a motion for an amendment. We had a second for that?
We've already had a second for the
I'm asking.
the amendment?
For the amendment.
Amendment that Mr. Norikis made.
No.
If no second, then the amendment dies and the original motion is back in
Right,
place.
he only said no. They went second to that. To move the money. Okay. Motion dies. Now we're back to our original motion. And we had a second, correct?
Yes.
Further discussion? All right. Roll call, please.
Anderson,
Yes.
Norikis,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Sprague,
Yes.
Walke,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
and Williams.
No.
Motion carries.
All right. You all, that was pretty dancy. All right. All right. That takes care of that. Ordinances. See agenda item 2A above. Did we already do that? We're done with that. Yes? The ordinances under H.
The ordinances were done right after the public hearing,
Okay.
so you're done with that, yes.
Okay, thank you. Resolutions, we're done with that. And then special order of business. Final order 2015-03 in the matter of adoption of the 2015 Transportation System Plan. Council is become Canadian all of a sudden. The council is about to vote on a final order to adopt the Lincoln City Transportation System Plan. On October 12th, the City Council held a public hearing to accept comment on the plan. Following the hearing, council directed staff to return with a final order. Final order 2015-03 is a written record of the council's action that followed its public hearing, deliberations, and tentative oral decision. Council's decision is to adopt the 2015 Transportation System Plan. If the final order accurately reflects the findings of the majority in the decision, council should approve it. Is there a motion to adopt Final Order 2015-03, adopting the 2015 Lincoln City Transportation System Plan?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call.
Walke,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Norikis,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
and Sprague.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And then let's see, after the vote. A notice of decision would be mailed to anyone who participated in the hearing in person or in writing. All right. Presentation, Nell Scott Gap Plan.
Mayor and City Council, I am here just to give you an update on what happened during our Nell Scott Design Week. Many of you participated in one or more events, but we are at a point where we are proposing an illustrative plan, and so I just want to make you aware of that. make you aware of a survey that's online, seeking more input, and also schedule next meeting for the Joint Planning Commission and City Council. For right now, I want to show you some of the activities that went on.
The projector or the light?
It's coming. It's warming up.
Tube systems.
Okay, the cover here is one of the plans that was made with found objects, and I'll show you some of the people who are working on that. This person liked flowers, obviously. Maybe this rather wasn't a plan, but a memory of favorite memory from childhood. Here's our Design Week schedule, and you can't read the details, but you can see a lot of different entries in that. First of all, we started on Wednesday, September 30th. The consultants came that day. They actually had come the night before, and they met with staff in the morning, and then all that afternoon they had an open design studio and invited property owners from the area to come and talk with them. Then in the evening we had an open house. The open house started with a presentation by Kirsten Green, our main consultant, and Lawrence Kamar, who's our architect town planner. And then James Rojas, who is a special guest we invited, brought his bag full of found objects, and these are all these bright colored things on the tables. He asked people to first well, I think in this event, he just went directly to the plan, and he said, he broke us up into groups, and he said, everybody use these found objects to create their ideal Lincoln City. And so we had, that was kind of an interesting experiment. People were reluctant at first, but I would say almost everybody joined in. You can see we have a couple property owners, we have ODOT people here, we have local residents and city councilors, a park board member, and staff. Here's the Design Week studio, and this was in the Nelscott Strip. Ron Rubin gave us the space, and we had that open from Wednesday afternoon through Saturday. Here you can see the architect at work. Here he is, Lawrence Kamar. This is Scotty Scotton and Roger Sprague, and I don't remember who else was there. I'm there. It was great, especially to see the property owners come in and sit down and work with Lawrence on developing this plan and talking about their goals for their property. And we had some property owners who owned contiguous parcels talking to each other, and that also was very beneficial. We had a group of students from the St. James Santiago School come, and that's the top photo. We also had some kids come after our Spanish event, which I haven't gotten to yet, but they enjoyed it so much before that they came and did a little bit more in the studio. This is James Rojas in the middle. He is an award-winning planner who has made his life work reaching out to those populations who normally don't come to city planning meetings or fill out our surveys. And Lawrence again. This is Dave Helton. He is our project manager from ODOT and Transportation Growth Management Program. Okay, the Joint Commission and Council Workshop, I don't have a photo, but we had 5 city council members, and Dick was there, so that's why I put 6 in parentheses. We had 3 planning commissioners there and 16 others. James Rojas and the staff went to the high school for a workshop, and it was about an hour-and-a-half workshop, and it was a lot of fun. He basically used the same technique. He brought out the found objects, and he asked people to create a favorite childhood memory. This was the leadership class at the high school. It was 49 students, a lot of energy there. But they were just very sensitive to each other, I thought, and they really put some effort into the projects. It was really a pleasure to be there. And we got to follow up with them with some questions. We had some extra time. So one of the things we clarified was that they kept saying that I thought I kept hearing them say they wanted a rodeo here in town, but really what they wanted was froyo, which is frozen yogurt. So that'll be easier, I think, in the long run. We had 2 events for Community Vision, and we kind of stepped outside of the Nelscott area and started taking a look at the whole city. We had an event on, this was Friday afternoon, from 3 to 5 at the community center, and then we had another one, we repeated it in the evening to make sure that we didn't exclude people who were working. So we had 36 in the afternoon, we had another 12 in the evening, but this was really great because we had such a mix of ages and interests, and we came up with some great plans. Once again, we had an opportunity to ask follow-up questions after the activities. So one thing a lot of people talked about was having how important outside activities, parks and open space are to them. And so we had a chance to follow up with that and talk about what kind of parks, the location of the parks, what it was exactly that they were saying. We had a Spanish language event on Saturday morning, and it was at the La Roca restaurant. This is Hilario, the owner, with, I believe, his niece. And we had a number of people stop by, I think maybe 12 people, plus staff and city councilors. Again, it was a mixed age group, and it was interesting to have the same common experiences from say, rural Mexico, as a lot of us had here in the United States in terms of our childhood memories. And a lot of times this is one observation I found was that with our staff when we did this, and with our older members who were visioning at with the community visioning meetings, and these people who mostly came from Latin American countries, and Mexico, South America maybe, but anyway, we had a lot of common experience about when we were young, playing outside, running all over our town. At least, maybe we felt that way. Maybe we weren't as free as we thought, but I think maybe we were. Experiencing the outdoors, the river in town, the playground, pick-up ball games and that kind of thing. When we talked to the high school students, it seemed that their childhood memories were much more focused on their home and their yard, or family vacations. And so they don't maybe have quite as much freedom as we did, or maybe it's not quite so easy to get around in our community as it was in some of those smaller towns and villages in the past. Our final meeting was following the Spanish workshop, and we had both a public event right here in the Nelscott Strip. We had it out on the Scott Plaza, and then we moved inside for our PAC meeting. These were not as well as attended as we'd like, but we had, again, a mixture of city officials and property owner, project advisory committee member, and we had a good discussion. This is the illustrative plan that was developed during the week, and this is going to be the subject of further meetings. So I'm giving you just a preview of this because this is really going to be the topic that we want to discuss at our joint Planning Commission Council meeting coming up on a date yet to be determined. This is our planning area, maybe a little bit extra here, and it's also showing our open spaces that adjoin it. This is the existing Nelscott Strip, and that certainly is part of it. They were a little alarmed at the end of our design week because Lawrence hadn't finished coloring, and it was just white. So So I want to assure everybody that it's still going to be there and enhanced to some extent. But we had a previous plan that was adopted in 2006 for Nelscott, and so intentionally, I think the focus has been on undeveloped or underdeveloped areas rather than those areas where they have a plan in place. I'm zooming in a little bit here to show you a couple different features. One is that we have amphitheater and other recreation area here. We also have some open space where either it's wetlands or the slopes are really steep. We also are showing a lot of mixed use on the outer parts of blocks, so that when you look across the street, you have this intensity of use. This mixed use could be retail or residential, mixture of retail and residential, typically. We have out here, out 23rd, we still have that industrial area out there, and we maintain that. That's one of the few places we have for industrial and warehouse uses in town. And we also show some expansion, I think, in that area. Here we show a rather large box, and that represents the 60,000 square foot maximum footprint we have here in our code. The 60,000 square foot limits the footprint, but not the overall size of the building. So if you had a two-story building, it could be 120,000 square feet or 180,000 square feet for a three-story. This represents a potential for some kind of a big box or at least a large grocery store. So that's something that we'll want to ask you more about and get your feelings at a later date. And we also are throwing this out to the public. Here's one more thing another feature of this is right along the highway, we have Baldy Creek. And Baldy Creek is pretty much covered up by invasives right now, so you don't see it. But the concept here is to clean that out and to make that an amenity in the neighborhood and also provide some separation from the highway noise and hustle and bustle to these mixed-use buildings that would be fronting on it. So that way we have a nice streetscape, but we provide a little bit of buffer to those uses. So the architect, Lawrence Kumar, has suggested having a single lane, as much as we do in the Nelscott Strip. He calls it a slip lane. And so cars can pull in off of that and then access these various businesses, parking typically in the rear. But in order to do that, we have a pretty constricted space, but he figured we have enough, and this is a typical example. This is in front of Charter. This is a sidewalk that we required when they developed this property. But he was taking a look at this saying, couldn't we have like a single lane and maybe parallel parking on one side, making those businesses maybe more attractive, having an option to park right in front or to access the rear. He also thought that there would be room for, in addition to that, for a sidewalk. So here's the south end. He didn't have this finished up during Design Week, but he sent this actually today. And I don't think it's showing too much different in the Nelscott existing development, but it does show some new development along the highway frontage and also our new 32nd Street intersection. The Urban Renewal owns property right here, and he's showing a different design for that than what we'd considered previously. And of course, that's the photo of our improved intersection. Okay, so I hope that makes people, gives them some food for thought, and we hope that they'll share some of those thoughts with us. We have a Survey Monkey, which is available at that website until October 30th. And if you go to our TS Lincoln City TSP, oh shoot, NelscottPlan.com. That's it, NelscottPlan.com is our website, and you can link to that from the website. It's a little easier to remember than the SurveyMonkey link. We had initially cut it off sooner, but we decided to extend it until October 30th to make sure everybody had an opportunity. So I'd encourage all of you and people at home to visit that. They do kind of make you work. They suggest you could watch PowerPoint. They suggest you could access the illustrative plan at another location. They have that on site, I think. But at any rate, there are a number of questions there, and please fill out what you're willing to, give us the time that you can to give us some feedback. The other thing that I want to ask you this evening is when we could arrange for a Planning Commission City Council workshop to talk more about this illustrative plan. And because that's really important before the consultants move forward on some of the detailed planning that goes into this. This is the week of December 7th through 11th. Kirsten is favoring, that's our lead planner, she is favoring Thursday. I have sent out a meeting wizard to all our project advisory committee members, and these 3 times seem to be the best for them. Either Tuesday at 5:30 or Thursday either at noon or at 5:30. We miss a few people either way, but if the council could meet on Thursday, that would be perfect. We could arrange it, the PAC to have the meeting whenever you don't want to, I guess.
You need an answer now?
That would be great if you can give me an answer now.
For me. It's a great date for me.
I can't meet at noon, but I can meet on a Thursday.
Okay, so what time would you like an afternoon?
Anytime after 3.
So the 5:30?
5:30 is fine.
Does that work for you?
The nice thing about having it earlier, the downside is that some of our commissioners work and cannot meet earlier than 5:30. The other side of the coin this time is that our architect is in Germany, and so he'll be up in the middle of the night. But I think he'll be up in the middle of the night either way. It's just earlier or later. So if you'd like to meet at 5:30, I'll put that down.
Easy for me.
It works for me.
5:30, December 10th.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Councilor Walkie, good with you? Yeah? A retiree? Okay.
Do you have any other questions about Design Week? The plan is something we'll be discussing fully later, at this workshop. But
I do, if nobody else does. In reaching out to the Latino community, how was that attended? I didn't quite get a number.
It was, I think there were about 12 people plus staff and council members.
And then how did we reach out to our Spanish-speaking and reading?
Well, we sent posters around to businesses in town that cater specifically to the Latino community. We also took them around to all the grocery stores. We took them to the Mexican restaurants here in town. And I'll show you an individual who is here. This woman right here is Vicki Meneses, and she is running the English as a Second Language program here in town. And she brought over some of her students, and I thought that was a nice connection.
Right. I just want to make sure, I applaud it. I just want to make sure that anything we learn that's successful to replicate, because I think it's really an underrepresented population here.
Yes, yes. We did advertise our meetings on the radio, and we had Timothy Novak, who works in our department, come, and because he's the best Spanish speaker we have, and so he extended the invitation in Spanish.
Okay. And then concerning the slip lanes, is that something that ODOT has a say over? Or is it
Well,
something we just-
this is outside of ODOT right-of-way,
Okay, that's my
so
question. Okay.
I think they were concerned about connections and how often we'd have connections to the highway from the slip lane, but I don't think they're concerned about the slip lane per se.
Would that be strictly a city-borne expense then, or is that something that assessed to the business owner?
I would say a lot of this strip is undeveloped, and so as it develops, we would probably have a fee and develop it. And well, it depends on how we want to develop it, honestly. If we want to develop it prior to development as an incentive to bring people into this area, then we'd have to find some other mechanism. Otherwise, it would be developed as, it would be installed, constructed as development occurs.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
That will be part of our plan, is the financing and the timing.
Mr. Norris?
Ms. Nicholson, I'd like to thank the planning staff for the time, energy, and the care devoted to both the TSP and the NELSCOT plan.
Well, thank you.
I think it was a job well done.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor? Yes, sir. Also, I really was taken aback when I went to the Spanish presentation there at the restaurant. They had an interpreter there so that we who don't speak fluent Spanish could know what they were talking about. I really appreciated that.
It was a really nice exchange. We actually had two interpreters, and they interpreted English for when we English-speaking people took our turns, then they would interpret it for the Spanish-speaking people and vice versa, so it worked well.
I hate to keep beating this dead horse, but it fascinates me because I'm so ignorant on the Spanish language. Is it a pretty cohesive language for most of the people who are there? Is there a dialect difference? Are we able to?
I was not aware that we had any kind of problem. Our two Spanish interpreters came with the consultant. They are employed by her, and they seemed not to have any trouble.
Good to hear. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I guess where are we on this? Did we not already?
All I needed was an indication of when you could meet, and
Right.
Otherwise, it was just for information.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deborah.
Mhm.
Right. Are we actually nearing the home stretch here? City manager, city attorney reports. Mr. Appicello.
Nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Okay. Mr.
Yes, I have just one item. So in moving forward with our VRD discussion, we'd like to discuss with you tonight the possibility of having another work meeting that will just focus on the time limitation provisions. We have two dates as suggested. The 3 o'clock time seemed to work well. So we were thinking either Monday, November 2nd, or Monday, November 9th. And that would correspond to your regular meeting. You just go straight from there into your meeting. We want to give you some marathon time.
My preference is the second.
While you're thinking through that, there are items that we discussed that will bring just straight to you during council meetings, things such as the education brochure and that kind of things. But there are a couple of items, and this one in particular, that needs a little bit more time to go through the discussion to determine how you would like to proceed.
Would those workshop meetings be televised?
I would like to televise them, yes.
I could watch on the 2nd. I might be able to attend by 3 on the 9th.
I would prefer the 9th just because it leaves one day open. Second.
It's 3 to 9 or possibly 10 p.m. meeting.
Done that many times?
Yeah, I know we've done it. That doesn't mean it's okay. I'm in favor of the second. Anyone else? We kind of need an agreement on this.
I'm open on both.
Okay. Mr. Ryan?
I'm open on both.
I could watch, but I couldn't attend on the second.
I don't care.
I'm open, prefer the second.
Okay. Second work?
I'm open, I just would rather have the day open.
Okay. So I guess I would
Instead of
too,
chopping it
trust
up.
me, but it's, being here all that time drives me crazy. Okay, so we'll do 3 o'clock, ERD, work session here. Session here.
Let me ask one other question on that. If you're looking at the second, Councilor Walke, would you be able to participate by phone?
Possibly. I may be traveling by car at that point.
Yeah.
Else, Mr. Chandler?
Did I catch that on the second? Is that
Yes,
what we're
second,
looking
3 p.m., council chambers.
at? Nothing else.
Okay. Reports from standing committees, none. Additional comments from citizens present on non-agenda items? Welcome back.
See if I can redeem myself, Mayor Williams.
Thank you.
And members of the council. I've been asking for a couple of weeks now how much we're spending on this investigation, which is in addition to the ethics complaint, I think, that the attorney spent time filing. And I believe what I heard tonight is that we've spent or budgeted $25,000 so far to try to find something, based on my conversation with the attorney who interviewed me, that we could somehow hold against the mayor so that you could do something which you haven't said. I'm just really shocked. And while I respect Mr. Noriakis, or Councilman Noriakis' attempt to put it in a budget line item that didn't look like the attorney was spending the money, to the citizens of the city of Lincoln City, I don't think they really care what line item it comes out of. The reality is the city council, either by direct vote, has authorized, or indirectly by the expenses that are ongoing, because I haven't heard this talked about prior tonight, is planning on spending, or has already spent, or is willing to spend $25,000 to try to find something that you can pin on the mayor so that you can, say you shouldn't do it? Last week I spoke about the chilling process of what you're doing. And I think when people on TV realize that if they ran for office and they don't get along, as in don't agree with, the majority, that they might have a similar investigation voted on by 4 or 5 or 6 members of the council, the chilling effect that I'm talking about is becoming really obvious. And we don't know whether you're going to spend $25,000 or authorize another $25,000 or authorize another $25,000, because we really don't know what it is you're trying to accomplish. We don't know what you've authorized. I just know that the attorney who asked to interview me said it was a broad in scope investigation to determine whether he could find anything that the mayor had done that would have violated a city council rule or a Lincoln City ordinance. Wow. I asked people all this week, to try to help me find the term other than witch hunt, and so far nobody's come up with an appropriate term. And you guys probably don't like that term. You guys probably don't like hearing me say it. I'm open to what you would suggest. Apparently, Mr. Noriakis earlier decided that even though the Ethics Committee, threw out the complaint and said there wasn't validity, he thinks there's somehow a responsibility to try to find something. And so maybe that's the case with this too. And I'm hoping to see who might respond to these comments also, because it's always curious to see who is the quickest to react by what I'm saying. But the point I'd really like to make for anybody who's still watching the City Council meeting is that the City Council right now appears to have authorized or has already expended $25,000 to instigate or conduct an investigation, and that may not be all the money you choose to spend. And at the same time, we decided not to spend $2,500 to fill an empty council seat. Just seems to me like some real strange priorities when it comes down to the expenditures of money. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Anyone else? Oh, seeing none. All right. We are moving to announcements or comments by City Council.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I talked to a lady Sunday who had gone to the Theater West production, and she said she was blown away by city councilor, Mr. Ryan, because he looked like a professional out of Hollywood, and that it went over very well.
Kudos. I'm looking forward to it. Mr. Norris?
Mr. Mayor, I had a conversation with Kirk Mylander from CIS at, I believe, Madam Recorder, that's County City Insurance Services, and the city has insurance contract with them. I spoke with him, and he informed me, this is for the information of the council, informed me that when an employee raises a concern, including an ethics concern, in good faith, then that employee cannot legally be treated any differently because the employee spoke up. It doesn't matter ultimately if the issue the employee raised hits a dead end or is dropped. The employee still cannot be treated worse because of it. CIS very much wants to help Lincoln City avoid any potential retaliation claims. Such claims drain time and resources from the city, are a huge distraction from important city services, and are expensive for CIS to defend. As a member-owned risk pool, CIS's claims expenses are spread across all our members, which means every time we avoid a claim, cities and counties in Oregon save money. In addition to that, we've got a number of volunteer positions available for anybody who might be interested. On the Arts Committee, we've got 3 openings, and those 3 openings must be city residents. On the Budget Committee, we've got 2 openings, which must be city residents. The Library Board, we've got 3 openings, which must be a city resident, and 1 opening for a high school student who lives from Depot Bay North. On the Parks Board, we've got 1 opening that may reside outside the city. 2 openings must be city residents. Planning Commission, now accepting applications for a position that expires December 31st, 2015. Sustainability Committee, 1 opening for somebody who lives in the urban growth boundary, 2 openings for city residents. Transient Room Tax Committee, 1 opening for a business person with financial, bookkeeping, or accounting experience. Need not be a city resident if your office is located within the city limits and if you reside within 12 miles of the city limits. Another opening on Transient Room Tax Committee for a motel owner / a motel owner, motel operator. And 2 openings on that same tax committee for city residents. And finally, for the Visitor and Convention Committee, 2 openings who must own or manage a business in the city. 1 opening can live in the urban growth boundary. Another opening must own or operate a lodging facility. And there's a November 3rd deadline for these openings. One more item. I discovered a 2014 Guide to Services in Lincoln County. This is 35 pages of information regarding hotlines, emergency food, employment, health, thrift stores, transportation, phone numbers, and I will leave this at the front desk in City Hall for anybody who wants to access it or recommend folks coming to peruse it. But this service, this Guide to Services is available. Thank you.
Councilor, was that compiled by the city?
County, I think.
Lincoln County, food share.
Okay. Anyone else?
I had something to say, Mr.
Please.
Mayor. Okay. On August 10th, I made a motion to send a complaint to the Oregon Government Ethics Commission, and the motion passed. I was aware that certain confidential information seemed to have been released beyond the council's executive session meetings. In order to get a second opinion, we agreed to send the complaint to the OGEC. The city attorney prepared the complaint, but it would not have been filed without direction from the council. The OGEC has dismissed the complaint, and we can put that behind us. However, I want to share my thoughts about confidential information. I have dealt with confidential information in my workplace for over 30 years. I would lose my job if I released confidential information. I hope that all of us on the council remember that it's imperative to keep confidential information confidential. This includes the media representatives who are allowed to attend executive session meetings to obtain background information. One member of the council does not get to decide that information should not be confidential and subsequently release it. It takes a majority of the council to decide to release any confidential information. I want to feel confident that information discussed during executive session meetings stays confidential. There are certain matters that should not be public until the appropriate time. Thank you.
Anyone else? My turn.
Oh,
yes,
Mr.
sir.
Mayor, I did have one thing to say, and that's you still have 3 weekends to see an old man in tights. And
what a disturbing vision that is.
It can be a very disturbing vision, but so far people are enjoying it. So.
Well, and I'm glad that you're healthy and such to do that. I'm going to just say a few words about the ethics investigation, if I might. And I'm going to read it just because it's easier for me to do that. Well, I'm certainly glad that the Ethics Commission dismissed the charges made against me. I find no joy in the victory. I'm saddened that in my shock and anger, I may have hurt or offended anyone here over the last few months. If I have offended my fellow councilors or staff, I apologize, and I ask for your forgiveness. And I will make every effort to conduct myself in a way that brings credit to this body and this city. So we have many great challenges and opportunities ahead of us, and I want to extend a hand of cooperation to all. And with that, anything else?
Thank you, Mayor Williams.
Thank you all. I appreciate, I know it wasn't easy. With that, I'm going to say may God bless you all, may God bless Lincoln City. We are adjourned. Okay.